I'll tell you a story about my friend Michael, a man who gave everything to his marriage, only to find out that the person he trusted most was living a double life. But what he did at the end will shock you. The kind of ending that makes you pause, blink twice, and think about what justice truly looks like. It began the way these things usually do, quietly, almost invisibly. 10 years into his marriage with Rachel, Michael started to notice things he couldn't quite name. A vague shift in energy. A little more distance, a little less warmth. Rachel had always been a morning person, smiling over coffee, chatting about her day, but lately she'd been more withdrawn. Her phone seemed to be in her hand more often than not, and she was suddenly very protective of it. She'd angle the screen away when he walked by, or leave it face down on the table. Michael brushed it off at first. He told himself it was stress. Her marketing job at a tech company in Austin had picked up lately, with new campaigns and tight deadlines. Then there were the late nights. It started with a few here and there. Then it became a pattern. Working late again, she'd say, breezing in past 10, tossing her coat onto the chair and giving him a peck on the cheek that felt more like habit than affection. Michael never wanted to be the paranoid husband. He'd always prided himself on being reasonable, grounded. But something didn't feel right. It was subtle, but undeniable. She laughed less. She didn't sit next to him on the couch anymore. When he reached for her in bed, she'd roll away, mumbling about exhaustion. Their intimacy, once regular and spontaneous, had dwindled to near non-existence. And the small lies began to creep in. One night, Rachel came home later than usual. She said she had dinner with her coworker Dana, a name Michael remembered from past stories. But when he casually mentioned something about Dana the next morning, Rachel snapped defensively, as if she was caught off guard. It was a small moment, but it planted the first real seed of doubt. Michael noticed other things too. She had started dressing differently. More makeup, tighter dresses, heels she hadn't worn in years. She said she needed to feel more professional, but Michael could sense it wasn't about work. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. They had built a life together in a quiet neighborhood just outside Austin. They had a golden retriever named Duke and a modest but beautiful house with a garden she used to love. She hadn't touched the roses in months. Michael tried to brush away the unease. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was just the stress of turning 40, the decade mark in their marriage looming large. But something deep inside him, something instinctual, whispered that the woman he married was no longer the woman sharing his bed. It was a gnawing discomfort, not yet sharp, but ever present. Like a song playing too quietly to understand, but loud enough to haunt him. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to discover that his instincts were dead on. And that what Rachel was hiding would break him. But it wouldn't end there. Because what Michael did after finding out would change everything. And that's where the Betrayal story begins. It happened on a Wednesday evening, a night that should have passed like any other. Michael had just returned from a client meeting in Dallas and stepped into their dimly lit home, expecting the usual quiet. Duke greeted him with the slow wag of a tail, the way old dogs do, loyal and constant. But Rachel wasn't home. That wasn't unusual these days. She texted earlier saying she was stuck at work again, a client dinner with her team. Michael tried to believe it. He heated leftovers, took Duke for a walk, and settled into his recliner with the game on low. Hours passed. When he finally heard her car in the driveway, he looked up, half relieved, half on edge. Rachel walked in wearing a red dress Michael had never seen before. Sleek, fitted, more provocative than her usual work attire. Her makeup was heavier, lips a deep burgundy, hair curled perfectly. She smelled different too. A new perfume. Something floral and spicy, expensive. She moved past him with barely a word, heading straight to the bedroom. Said she was exhausted. Michael stared after her, the air in the room feeling heavier by the second. It wasn't the dress or the makeup or even the perfume. It was the lipstick mark, a smudge, barely noticeable, high on her collar, in a place he knew she couldn't reach on her own. Something shifted inside him then. A sense of knowing. He didn't say anything that night. Instead, he lay awake beside her, watching the shadows move across the ceiling, listening to her slow, steady breaths. The next morning, as she rushed out the door, Michael found her scarf on the back of the couch. It smelled of the same perfume. But there was another scent too, something masculine, faint but present. A cologne he didn't recognize. That was when it truly sank in. He was not imagining things. There was someone else. Later that week, he opened Instagram on her tablet, a device she rarely used and often forgot to lock. One of her photos had been liked by a man named Grant Larson. The name meant nothing at first, but the frequency of likes and comments suggested something more. Michael clicked through to Grant's profile. A corporate headshot, a fitness junkie by the looks of it, with frequent posts at fancy restaurants and hotel lounges in and around Austin. And in one picture, Grant wore a watch Michael remembered. He'd seen it once, in a box Rachel had left on the nightstand weeks ago, claiming it was a client gift. That was the moment the seed of suspicion became something else. A realization. The details fell together like puzzle pieces, each one innocuous alone but damning in combination. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he started writing things down. Dates, times, little inconsistencies. A private journal, carefully hidden. Michael wasn't just suspicious anymore. He was certain. And you have no idea what happened at the end of the story. Because Michael's quiet unraveling had only just begun. Michael never considered himself a sneaky person. He had spent his life being honest, almost to a fault. But now he felt like a man navigating a minefield blindfolded. He moved quietly, cautiously, alert to every detail. The truth, he realized, didn't shout. It whispered. He began with small steps. Passwords first. Rachel used the same variation of her birth year for most things. It didn't take long to access her laptop. She always kept it in the kitchen, on the counter beside the fruit bowl. He waited for her to go on a work trip to Houston, a convenient overnight meeting. The moment she left, Michael opened her laptop, his hands trembling despite his calm exterior. Emails. Most were work-related. But buried in a folder marked campaign_archive were exchanges with a personal Gmail address. Grants. They used vague, professional language at first, but the time stamps told a different story. Emails sent after midnight. One had an attached photo of a wine glass with a handwritten note beside it, "Last night was unforgettable." He took screenshots. Saved everything to a thumb drive he kept locked in his filing cabinet at the office. He didn't trust cloud storage. Not for this. Not when the stakes were this personal. Next came her phone. Rachel had grown careless. Or perhaps overconfident. She left it charging by the bed one Saturday afternoon when she took a shower. Michael only needed 5 minutes. He saw deleted messages in her chat app, but the notifications had left remnants, previews. Words like "missed you" and "can't wait" haunted the edges of his screen. He installed a monitoring app. Something discreet. She never noticed. Weeks passed, and the weight of knowledge began to alter him. He started to see the world differently. Every word she spoke, every movement she made was filtered through a new lens. He listened to her speak to Grant late at night in hushed tones while pretending to sleep. He heard the way her voice softened in a way it never did for him anymore. Still, he never confronted her. The evidence wasn't for that. Not yet. It was for something more deliberate. He checked hotel receipts, tracked card purchases. Dinners at restaurants they never went to together. Gift shop purchases. One from a spa in San Antonio. Rachel had told him she was visiting her sister that weekend. Michael even drove past Grant's downtown condo one evening after work. He parked across the street and waited. At 9:47 p.m., he saw her enter the building. She didn't see him. She was laughing. Her hair curled the way she wore it when she wanted to impress. She never noticed the old sedan idling across the way. That night, Michael didn't sleep. Not out of rage. But out of clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when denial is no longer an option. He knew what was happening now. He had proof. Real proof. And with that proof came power. But he wasn't ready to use it. Not yet. He was still gathering. Because revenge, he decided, isn't loud either. Revenge, like the truth, is best served quiet. And very, very cold. Michael wasn't expecting the confirmation to come so plainly. He had envisioned a slip-up, maybe a message sent to the wrong device, or a careless whisper overheard. But instead, it arrived in the most ironic form possible, a forgotten backup. Rachel had always synced her phone with the family desktop, a habit that hadn't changed even as her behavior had. One Saturday morning while doing routine cleaning on the computer, Michael stumbled upon a folder tucked away in the cloud backup directory. Its innocuous label, sync_review, gave no hint of its contents. But inside, there they were, screenshots, message previews, image caches. Leftovers from an app Rachel thought she had deleted. He opened the folder. The first few images seemed generic. Then the names appeared. Grant. Hotel Indigo. The Driscoll. Captions full of inside jokes, photos of dinner plates with two glasses always present, selfies with Rachel's smile aimed at someone else. And then, a selfie of her in the red dress she had worn that night. The same one he had never seen before. Standing in front of a hotel mirror. No wedding ring on her hand. The chats were worse. Snippets of plans made when Michael was out of town. Phrases like, he suspects nothing, I need to be more careful, and, you make me feel alive again. Each message burned a hole in his gut, not because of what they implied, but because they left nothing to interpretation. It wasn't just sex. It was intimacy. Laughter. Emotional betrayal in its rawest form. And then he found it. A video. Just a few seconds. Grant's voice in the background, Rachel speaking playfully, filming herself with a drink in hand, referring to a weekend just for us. The video ended with her saying his name in a tone Michael hadn't heard in years. A soft, dreamy tone. That alone turned his stomach more than any photo ever could. Michael didn't react right away. He didn't scream or smash the screen. He simply sat back in his chair and exhaled slowly. The weight of it all pressed down on him like a lead blanket. He had known. Deep down, he had known for weeks, maybe months. But the difference between suspicion and truth was a chasm. And now he had crossed it. He took a walk through their neighborhood, Duke trailing beside him with his usual sluggish loyalty. The trees rustled overhead, children played in the distance, sprinklers ticked methodically on manicured lawns. The world moved on as if nothing had happened. But inside, Michael was different now. He returned home and made copies. Digital and physical. Stored them in multiple locations. He didn't want revenge in a fury. He wanted it exact. Precise. Surgical. He watched Rachel closely after that. Not obsessively, but deliberately. He noticed how she spoke more gently when lying, how she avoided eye contact when fabricating a story. Once you knew someone was capable of deception, it colored everything they did. One night she told him she was attending a late networking mixer. He nodded. Hours later, he opened the tracker and saw her location at the same boutique hotel downtown. The same one from the photos. It was no longer about catching her. He already had everything. Now, he was calculating. He thought about their assets. The house, the joint savings, the investments he had managed alone. Rachel had never shown much interest in the financial side of things. That would work in his favor. And then, there was Duke. Their golden retriever, technically his before the marriage. She adored the dog, but it was Michael who walked him, fed him, took him to the vet. Duke followed Michael, not Rachel, when they called from separate rooms. Michael made a note. He also began speaking with a lawyer. Quietly. A friend from college. Confidential, initial consultations. He mapped out scenarios, looked at timelines. He wanted to know exactly what Rachel would lose. The affair was no longer a secret, not to Michael. But to Rachel, it was still her hidden indulgence. She still smiled at him with the pretense of partnership. Still made dinner a few times a week. Still left affectionate notes on the fridge. Michael saw through it all. The time for discovery had ended. The time for strategy had begun. Because the truth was no longer a wound. It was ammunition. Michael didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. He wasn't interested in confrontation, shouting matches, or storming out of the house in dramatic flair. What he wanted was consequence. A result. A kind of justice that didn't just end a betrayal, but rewrote the final chapter with cold precision. He started with the finances. Every shared account, every joint investment, every automatic payment and tax detail had been under his name or management. Rachel, despite all her savvy in marketing, had never shown much interest in the numbers behind their life. That apathy would cost her. Michael met with his lawyer weekly now. Quiet lunches in discreet cafes, documents passed under napkins, timelines refined. He learned what counted most in a no-fault divorce state, how infidelity could still tip the balance when assets were divided. He also learned that evidence mattered more when it came to influence than punishment. And he had plenty. He made slow, deliberate changes. Closed joint savings and opened new accounts under his name. Redirected deposits from their rental property. Consulted a property assessor and requested an independent valuation of their home. He hired a discreet appraiser to document the items Rachel might later claim as hers, art, jewelry, designer handbags, all with receipts proving his sole purchase. Next, he turned to social optics. Rachel had always cultivated an image. Their friends knew her as charming, driven, full of life. But Michael knew how quickly a narrative could change when truth peeked through the curtains. He began planting seeds, subtle ones. Casual conversations with mutual friends, mentions of feeling distant lately, of not being sure where things were going. He never accused. He never painted her as a villain. He simply allowed doubt to drift into the social air like perfume. And Rachel, oblivious in her overconfidence, gave him more than enough fuel. She came home later. Her explanations grew lazier. Once, she told him she had to work late, but forgot she had posted a photo of a girls' night out on her story. Michael saved the image. Another time, she left her credit card statement on the counter. Charges from the hotel bar near Grant's condo. He photographed those, too. He bought a new phone, untraceable to his account, and used it solely to document his evidence. Audio clips, video logs, screenshots. He backed up everything twice. He called it, the vault. Then came Duke. Rachel had claimed affection for the dog for years, but in truth, Duke belonged to Michael long before she entered the picture. He had the adoption papers. The vet records. Photos dating back years. When the time came, there would be no debate. Michael crafted the final stage of his plan with the care of a chess master. He arranged for a weekend getaway. Told Rachel he had a business seminar in Denver. She didn't ask many questions. She even seemed relieved. That was when he knew. She had already booked time with Grant. Michael left, but not to Denver. He spent the weekend finalizing details. By the time he returned, the legal trap had been set. Paperwork drafted. Assets secured. Evidence prepared. Witness statements gathered from friends who had seen her with Grant. Nothing aggressive, but all admissible. He walked into their home on Sunday evening to find Rachel curled up on the couch, wine glass in hand, smiling like nothing in the world could touch her. She had no idea the ground beneath her was about to fall away. Michael smiled back. A soft, even smile. The kind you give when you know something no one else does. He wasn't angry anymore. He was focused. The betrayal had ended. But Rachel's reckoning was just beginning. Michael had no intention of dragging the truth into the light without the perfect stage. The spectacle wasn't just for Rachel. It was for everyone who believed in their carefully maintained illusion. He wanted the mask to fall where it mattered, where it would have the most impact. Their 10th anniversary approached, and Rachel suggested they host a small gathering with close friends and family. Michael agreed without hesitation. She didn't suspect anything. He played his part, nodding along, smiling at the idea. He even offered to take care of the catering. The guest list included all the usual names, Rachel's colleagues, their shared circle of friends, Michael's sister, and even their old neighbors who had moved to San Antonio. The living room and backyard were prepared with lanterns, ambient jazz, and tables set with candles and appetizers. Rachel dressed for the occasion in a new emerald green dress that shimmered in the evening light. She looked radiant, and Michael let her bask in the compliments. He circulated the room, checking in with guests, exchanging pleasantries, and pouring wine. On the outside, he looked like the perfect host, the loving husband. But inside, he counted down the minutes. When the evening reached its peak, glasses clinking, laughter filling the air, Michael tapped a spoon against his glass. The room quieted. He thanked everyone for coming, acknowledged the years of love and support, and spoke of milestones and memories. Then, he took a breath and shifted the tone. He mentioned trust. Commitment. The promises that marriage is supposed to represent. He talked about betrayal. Not as a concept, but as something real. Something personal. He didn't name Rachel directly at first. Instead, he read excerpts from the messages she had exchanged with Grant. Described locations. Dates. He projected photos, carefully chosen, not explicit but intimate, onto a screen he had rolled out beside the patio. The crowd shifted. Whispers spread. Rachel's face drained of color. She stood frozen in place, unable to move, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Michael turned toward her. Then and only then did he speak her name. Calmly. Firmly. He stated that the marriage was over. That papers had already been filed. That the house, the car, and Duke would remain with him. He explained that the evidence of her affair had been meticulously gathered, documented, and filed with legal counsel. That there would be no negotiation. Rachel attempted to speak, to interrupt, but Michael held up a hand and continued. He stated that deceit had a cost. That disrespect demanded consequences. Then he walked away. The guests dispersed slowly, some in disbelief, others quietly supportive. Rachel stood amid the ruins of her celebration, her life unraveling not in private, but in front of everyone who had once cheered for their love story. Michael went upstairs, changed out of his suit, and sat on the edge of the bed beside Duke, who wagged his tail without judgment. Justice didn't need to shout. Sometimes it only needed the right audience and perfect timing. Rachel had lost everything she thought she controlled. And Michael? He finally had peace. The morning after the anniversary party, the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels hollow, like sound itself has retreated out of respect for something broken. Rachel had left in the early hours, her belongings hastily packed into the back of her car. She hadn't said a word, and Michael hadn't offered one either. But the story didn't end there. Michael's plan had always been layered, not just about ending the marriage, but about reclaiming himself, on his own terms. After the disclosure, the legal process moved quickly. His attorney, well prepared and armed with evidence, negotiated a settlement that left Michael with full ownership of the house, the car, the investment account, and Duke. Rachel received none of the joint assets, only the contents of her closet and a deeply diminished reputation. Yet what made the ending twist wasn't just what Michael gained. It was what he revealed. 3 weeks after the party, while Rachel was still reeling from the fallout, a quiet notice appeared in the local paper. Michael had filed for a change in ownership of the small marketing firm they had started together years ago, one Rachel had walked away from when she took her corporate job. She had forgotten it still existed. Michael hadn't. He had nurtured it quietly, signed new clients, built it slowly in the background. What Rachel hadn't known was that Grant had been one of those clients, through a shell company Michael had established with a third-party intermediary. He had watched the affair unfold from both the personal and professional front, collecting not only emotional evidence but financial leverage. Grant, realizing the extent of his exposure, withdrew from several business opportunities. His professional image took a hit. Word spread that he had violated contract terms, misused company time, and compromised client confidentiality. Michael never had to say a word. He simply sent anonymous reports to the right parties. Rachel tried to reach out once, a generic email titled "Closure." Michael never responded. There was no need. He had closed the chapter his way. As for life afterward, Michael did not crumble. He did not spiral. Instead, he flourished. With Duke by his side, he reconnected with old friends, took up hiking again, and even started mentoring young entrepreneurs at the local college. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply free. Months later, he met someone. Not through dating apps or setups, but organically, while volunteering at a community event. Her name was Lauren. She loved dogs, had a dry wit, and had been through betrayal of her own. They talked for hours the first time, and it felt like a conversation without weight. No expectations. Just honesty. They started slowly. Michael made no promises, offered no fairy tales. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like himself. And that was enough. Rachel became a footnote. A story he once lived through, not a wound he carried. Sometimes betrayal teaches you what matters. But more importantly, it teaches you what to never settle for again. And if you think this was Michael's only story worth telling, think again. Because he's not the only one in his circle with secrets, scars, and stunning comebacks. Stick around. There's more where that came from.